Sam, where Sam's like, it's okay, we're gonna fix this. And then the very last thing we shot, so Jared gets wrapped, Ruth is wrapped, and they set up a camera right in front of the sink. So there's no mirror, it's just a camera lens, maybe this far from me. And then camera operator, focus puller, boom operator, dolly grip, and then like the whole crew. And I just remember thinking, I was like, okay, just imagine it's a mirror. And thank God I have a good imagination. And I remember telling John Badham, who directed that episode, I remember telling John, I was like, look, it's late, everybody wants to go home, this is the last scene of the day, just keep the cameras rolling. I'm just gonna go through the scene a couple of times. So normally you do the scene and you cut, right? Cut, the bell goes off, everybody breathes a sigh of relief. Okay, we're one take down. Take two, they come in with a marker, they slate it, they roll camera, roll sound, that whole thing. I just was like, listen, we're not rolling film anymore, so just let the camera roll. It's digital. It's ones and zeros, that's all it is. Let the camera roll and let me just do this a couple of times and get myself into this. Let me imagine that the mirror is in front of me and not a camera and an operator and a focus puller and whatever. So John just let me go, and I was really happy with the way that turned out, and I hope you guys were too. So. Yeah. I do remember, because it was one take, but I did the scene like 3 times, and then they yelled cut after I did it 3 times, and I think they used the third rendition, maybe the second rendition, I don't remember, one of them, but they yelled cut, and I was like, nailed it, good night guys. And then that was it, I just walked to my trailer and we were done with the day. But getting it in one take is always kind of a prideful thing, and it also helps production because we can move along quicker. But nailing it in one take, even like the dolly grip, like when they yell cut, I'll just hear nailed it. It's a common saying on our show. Thank you. Hi.
Hi. So I just wanted to first of all say that in episode 22, the scene between you and Mary, you were phenomenal. I think
I haven't seen it.
It was really nice.
Honestly, like I don't know how that turned out. That was kind of one of those things where you just throw it out there and kind of like the mirror scene. Like I haven't seen it, so it was okay.
It was really good. So my question is that Dean kind of got his moment with Mary in terms of letting out how he felt, and I think it was much needed throughout the season, so it felt more like a build-up. And at the same time, I feel like that Sam didn't really get to let out any of his anger or frustration maybe throughout the season as much. And maybe the reason why that he wanted to lead rather than be a follower, and the way that Dean kind of said, okay, you can do this because you've got this, was because he needs to let it out. Did you feel that maybe Sam needs to show more emotion, and maybe in terms of anger and frustration? Did you feel that?
Possibly. Yeah, it could have been a little bit more troubling for him. But I think given the context of the storylines and the fact that, Mom was involved with the British Men of Letters, and he kind of got roped into being a part of that. Sure, he could have been upset, and everything all right? Is that a fire alarm? Do we need to leave the building? Misha's photo op? So nobody needs to leave then. It's too easy. So, I don't know, I think it was fine. I think it was, I mean, look, I'm not gonna tell Jared that he played a scene wrong, because I think his choices, in my opinion, he makes right choices. I think he does a pretty good job of portraying Sam. And I would never question his motives for portraying that character. I will, however, give him little, like if I see him doing a scene and I maybe think that could have been, this moment could have been better, or this line could have been highlighted a little bit more, or he was missing a piece of the story a little bit, then I'll say it to him. I'll be like, hey, hit that moment a little bit more. And he'll be like, you're right. And he does the same for me. And I think it's one of the reasons we work so well together, is because we literally have each other's backs, and we're looking out for each other. And that's not something that even a director would come up and be like, hey Jared, listen, I like what you're doing with the character, but if I could just give you a note. Jared would be like, I've been playing this character for 12 years. Shut up. So literally there is only one person that he and I would listen to as far as giving tonal character notes, and that's each other. You brought up something that made me think of a little story, which is, so the scene with Mary has a funny backstory. When I read it, and I don't know, some of you maybe have heard this or we've talked about it, but when I read it, I was like, there it is. Meaning, at the end of last season, when Amara looked at Dean and said, I'm going to give you what you need the most. I would have thought it would have been his father. But Jeffrey Dean Morgan's not available. Because he's awesome and he works constantly. So I was like, oh my God, they're gonna try to get Jeff back. And then they're like, no, we're gonna bring Mom back. And I was like, interesting choice. Okay. And for the entire season, Jensen, had a hard time processing that for Dean. And I think it kind of read that Dean was almost, he was unsure about the relationship with Mom. And he didn't know why. And I didn't know why. And it was kind of weird. And I love Samantha to death. I mean, she was one of the sweetest people on the planet. But as far as from a character standpoint, like, there was kind of a friction, or not even a friction. There wasn't a. It wasn't cohesive, and for me that troubled me, because I like to find that connection with another character, and I think that's one of the things that drives the show the way it does, is the relationships between the brothers, the relationship between Dean and Cass, the relationships between Crowley, even, like, all of those relationships have a place, and they have some sort of a cohesiveness. And I struggled to find that with Mary, and it bothered me. And I couldn't understand. I was like, why am I having such a difficult time, like, finding that gel, finding that pocket with my mom, and making sense of what the darkness had said at the end of last season. And when I got the script for 22 and I read that scene, I was like, there it is. That's what Dean needed the most, was to forgive his mother. And so Robert Behrens, who wrote that script, was on set that day, because a lot of times at the end of the season, the writers of the scripts will come up and visit the set to watch their episodes get filmed. And it's at the end of the season because they don't have any other scripts to write. Because in the beginning of the season, they're already working on their next script and they got to write it and they got work to do. So Bob Behrens came up and he was sitting behind the monitors. And I remember walking up to him and I was like, "Hey man, I got to thank you for literally clearing up the entire season for me with in respect to the Dean and Mary relationship." And he's like, "How do you mean?" I was like, well, where I say that, I forgive you. I hate you, but I love you, and I forgive you. And he was like, what? I was like, don't mess with me. That's tied into the last season. He's like, uh-huh. So I don't know if he was messing with me, but if that was a mistake, that was the happiest accident that I've ever experienced. Because for me, that's what I played. When I had that scene with Samantha, I was playing that. I was playing that this is why you came back. This is why God and the darkness gave you back to me for this catharsis, this cathartic moment. And I don't know, I was very, very happy with that turn in the script, and it was heavy.